The Galactic Council, a bureaucratic mess of the galaxy's finest egos, gathered in their grand chamber, a shimmering monument to over-engineering and self-importance. The council members, representing dozens of species, floated, perched, or slithered in their seats, all sharing one common trait: the smug certainty that they knew best. Today, they faced an urgent matter: the unruly inhabitants of a backwater planet called Earth. Humans, drawled High Chancellor RYM of the Zitharax, adjusting his regal tentacles with a dramatic flourish, are a nuisance. Primitive, violent, and distressingly creative with weaponry. I propose immediate subjugation before they start launching their nuclear toys into space. I second the motion, buzzed Oxil of the Crystallians, a translucent being who resembled a disco ball on stilts. Their entertainment transmissions alone are an affront. I've watched 5 minutes of their reality TV and lost faith in intelligent life. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Only Representative Grease of the Urit, a small rodent-like creature with wide eyes, hesitated. Perhaps we could try diplomacy? They might surprise us. The room erupted in laughter so hearty that it echoed off the crystalline walls. RYM wiped a tear from one of his many eyes. Oh, Grease, you naive little mammal. If they've taught us anything, it's that humans only negotiate after they've run out of bullets. Thus, the decision was made. A fleet of Galactic Council ships descended on Earth, their arrival heralded by global panic and a viral TikTok trend about alien overlord chic. The Council's plan was simple: deploy shock troops, overwhelm Earth's defenses, and establish a quick occupation. Resistance would be crushed swiftly, leaving humanity too demoralized to fight back. It was, in their collective opinion, foolproof. Unfortunately, they hadn't accounted for Sergeant Daniel Kane. Kane wasn't having a good day. His platoon, stationed in the rugged mountains of Montana, had been tasked with securing a civilian evacuation route. What started as a routine mission quickly devolved into chaos when the sky turned purple and massive alien crafts began blotting out the sun. Before anyone could say, "What the hell is that?" plasma bolts rained down, obliterating everything in their path. Kane barked orders into his radio, his deep voice cutting through the din of explosions. "Fall back to the ridge. Cover fire now." His men scrambled, their training kicking in despite the sheer absurdity of fighting aliens. Kane, crouched behind a rock, fired his rifle at a group of advancing GC soldiers. The aliens, resembling armored lizards with bad attitudes, barely flinched as his bullets ricocheted off their shields. "Bullets don't work," muttered Private Jenkins, wide-eyed and clutching his weapon like a security blanket. "Thanks for the update, Jenkins," Kane snapped, reloading. "Next time, let me know before I waste half a clip." The battle was brutal and one-sided. The GC's technology was centuries ahead, and Kane's platoon was outnumbered 10-1. One by one, his soldiers fell, until only Kane remained, pinned down and bleeding from a gash on his side. The aliens closed in, their leader, a towering creature with an air of smug superiority, raising a plasma blade for the final strike. "Leave him," the leader hissed in perfect English, a language they had deemed too primitive to bother translating. "A single human poses no threat." As the aliens departed, Kane lay motionless, playing dead until the sound of their footsteps faded. He rolled onto his back, wincing as pain flared through his body. "A single human poses no threat," he muttered, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, we'll see about that." Dragging himself to cover, Kane assessed his situation. His radio was fried, his ammo spent, and his body battered. But he was alive. And if there was one thing the aliens had underestimated, aside from his ability to swear creatively, it was the stubborn resilience of an American soldier. Kane spent the night patching himself up with a medkit scavenged from a fallen comrade. It wasn't pretty, but it would do. He also salvaged a few alien gadgets, though figuring out how they worked was like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. One device, a sleek metal cylinder, emitted a low hum when he pressed a button. He decided to call it a death stick until further notice. By morning, Kane had a plan, or at least the outline of one. Step 1. Survive. Step 2. Figure out how to use alien tech against its makers. Step 3. Make the Galactic Council regret not finishing the job. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him moving. As he trudged through the forest, Kane couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a lone soldier with a ragged uniform and a questionable grasp of alien weaponry, going up against an intergalactic empire. The odds were laughable, but Kane had faced worse. Like the time Jenkins accidentally set their Humvee on fire during a training exercise. Or that one Thanksgiving when his aunt insisted on discussing politics over turkey. Compared to those disasters, alien invaders were almost refreshing. Kane's thoughts were interrupted by a distant rumble. Peering through the trees, he spotted a GC patrol, a small group of lizard-like soldiers accompanied by a hovering drone. They were searching for survivors, their movements methodical and efficient. Well, Kane muttered, gripping his rifle. No time like the present to test out the death stick. He crept closer, heart pounding as adrenaline sharpened his senses. When the patrol was within range, he activated the alien device and pointed it at the drone. A beam of energy shot out, hitting the target with a satisfying zap. The drone spiraled out of control before crashing to the ground in a fiery explosion. The lizard soldiers turned in unison, their eyes narrowing. Kane grinned, raising his rifle. Surprise, boys! The ensuing skirmish was quick and dirty. Kane's mix of human grit and newly acquired alien firepower proved effective, though not without its hiccups. At one point, he accidentally activated a setting on the death stick that emitted a high-pitched screech, startling both him and his enemies. But in the end, he emerged victorious, standing over the bodies of his fallen foes. As he scavenged more gear, Kane felt a spark of hope. The Galactic Council might have ships, weapons, and an army of lizard warriors, but they lacked one crucial thing: the sheer audacity of a human with nothing to lose. He looked up at the sky, where the alien mothership loomed like a second moon. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," he said, his voice low and determined. And with that, Sergeant Daniel Kane disappeared into the forest, a single man with a death stick and a grudge, ready to take on the galaxy. The first few days were rough, even by Kane's standards. Wounded and running low on supplies, he survived on nothing but creek water and sheer stubbornness. Every step he took was a reminder of his injuries, but if he stopped, he knew he'd be dead, either from blood loss or the next alien patrol. Rest wasn't an option. Revenge, on the other hand, was... He set up a temporary camp in an abandoned cabin deep in the mountains, a spot far from any known evacuation route. It was the perfect hideout, rustic, drafty, and filled with enough spiderwebs to make any horror movie proud. 5-star accommodations, Kane muttered, brushing a particularly aggressive spider off his boot. The first thing he did was lay out all the alien tech he'd collected. There wasn't much, just a plasma rifle, 2 of the death sticks, and a small orb that hummed when he shook it. Kane figured it was either a bomb or an alien magic 8-ball, but he wasn't feeling lucky enough to test it yet. He sat down with the rifle, popping open its panels and studying the alien circuitry. Back in his pre-military days, Kane had a reputation as the guy who could fix anything with duct tape and a bit of elbow grease. Alien plasma weapons couldn't be that different from an old truck engine, right? After hours of fiddling and a near miss involving a self-destruct feature, he managed to get the rifle working. It hummed with a faint blue glow when he activated it. Kane aimed at a tree outside the cabin and fired. The blast disintegrated the trunk, leaving behind a smoldering crater. "Not bad," Kane said with a grin. "Looks like I brought a stick to a gunfight after all." Armed with his newfound firepower, Kane began scouting the surrounding area. The Galactic Council's patrols were frequent, sweeping the countryside in search of survivors. Most humans had already been captured or driven into hiding, but the few who remained were easy targets. Kane didn't have much in the way of a grand strategy yet, but he knew one thing: the more alien patrols he could disrupt, the better. His first ambush was almost too easy. He spotted a group of 4 lizard soldiers marching through a narrow valley, their steps synchronized with military precision. Kane waited until they were directly below him before dropping a makeshift boulder trap, one he'd rigged with logs and a generous helping of gravity. The crash sent the patrol scattering, and Kane picked them off with his plasma rifle before they could regroup. As he looted their supplies, he found a communication device, a sleek wristband with blinking lights. "Bet this gets good reception," Kane muttered, slipping it onto his wrist. The device crackled to life, a robotic voice barking out coordinates in an alien language. Kane didn't understand the words, but he got the gist. The Galactic Council was starting to get nervous. The next few weeks played out like a bad action movie montage. Kane became a ghost in the wilderness, striking quickly and vanishing before the aliens could retaliate. He blew up supply convoys, sabotaged energy towers, and turned every patrol he encountered into a cautionary tale. Word spread among the resistance fighters. There was a lone soldier out there, a man who seemed hell-bent on making the aliens regret ever landing on Earth. They started calling him the Ghost, and while Kane found the nickname a little dramatic, he wasn't about to argue. One particularly rainy night, Kane stumbled across a small resistance camp hidden in the forest. The group, a ragtag bunch of civilians and former soldiers, had been barely holding on since the invasion. When they saw Kane, muddy and carrying a plasma rifle, their leader, a wiry woman named Captain Morales, raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess," she said dryly. "You're the guy blowing up half the countryside." "Guilty," Kane said. "You're welcome." Morales studied him for a long moment before breaking into a grin. "We could use someone like you." The partnership was a game-changer. Kane taught the resistance fighters how to adapt their guerrilla tactics to alien technology, and Morales provided him with intel on Galactic Council movements. Together, they began coordinating larger-scale attacks, striking at key GC outposts and supply lines. Every victory chipped away at the aliens' control over the region, and Kane could feel the tide starting to turn. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There was the time Jenkins, yes, that Jenkins, accidentally detonated a cache of alien grenades during a training exercise. "I didn't know they were voice-activated," he protested as the camp smoldered behind him. And the time Kane mistook a GC scouting drone for a particularly ugly bird, earning him a solid round of teasing from Morales. But despite the setbacks, the resistance was stronger than ever. One night, after a particularly successful ambush on a GC supply convoy, Kane and Morales sat by the campfire, sharing a rare moment of quiet. "You know," Morales said, poking at the flames with a stick, "they're scared of you." "The Council?" Kane asked. "Yeah, we intercepted one of their transmissions. They're calling you a significant tactical anomaly." Kane snorted. "Sounds like a fancy way of saying pain in the ass." "Pretty much," Morales agreed. "But they're not just scared of you. They're scared of what you represent. If a single human can cause this much damage, what happens when the rest of humanity fights back?" Kane didn't have an answer for that. All he knew was that he wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next day, the Resistance intercepted another GC transmission, this one detailing a high-priority command post hidden deep in the mountains. If they could take it out, it would cripple the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces. It was risky, borderline suicidal, and exactly the kind of mission Kane lived for. As he geared up for the assault, Kane couldn't help but think back to the Galactic Council's decision to leave him alive. "A single human poses no threat," they'd said. Kane grinned. They really should have done their homework. The morning of the assault dawned with the kind of eerie stillness that usually signaled something catastrophic was about to happen. Kane stood at the edge of the resistance camp, checking his gear with practiced efficiency. His plasma rifle was freshly charged, 2 alien death sticks were strapped to his vest, and a few human grenades rattled in his belt for good measure. Morales walked over, her usual no-nonsense expression softened by a hint of concern. "You ready for this?" she asked, handing him a battered canteen. "Define ready," Kane replied, taking a swig. "If you mean definitely about to make some questionable life choices, then yeah, I'm ready." Morales shook her head, but couldn't quite hide a smile. "They're calling this place the Hive. It's the nerve center for all Galactic Council operations on Earth. If we take it out, they'll have no choice but to pull back, or send every ship they've got to turn us into a fine powder," Kane said. "Either way, I'm game." The plan was simple. Well, as simple as launching a full-scale attack on an alien stronghold could be. Kane would lead a small strike team to infiltrate the Hive's power core and plant explosives, while Morales coordinated a diversionary assault to draw out the GC's forces. The odds of survival were somewhere between not great and you've got to be kidding me, but nobody in the resistance seemed too concerned. They'd been living on borrowed time since the invasion started. The Hive itself was an architectural monstrosity, a sprawling metallic fortress carved into the side of a mountain, with massive plasma cannons jutting out at every angle. Its surface shimmered with alien energy fields that pulsed like a heartbeat, and dozens of patrol drones buzzed around it like mechanical hornets. As they approached the outer perimeter, Jenkins, who had somehow survived both the Grenade incident and countless other near-death experiences, nervously adjusted his helmet. So, what's the backup plan if this goes sideways? Plan B is we all run very fast in different directions, Kane said. Try to look less delicious than the person next to you. They reached the first checkpoint, a towering energy gate guarded by 2 lizard soldiers. Kane didn't bother with subtlety. He lobbed a grenade over the gate, and the ensuing explosion sent the guards flying. The gate's control panel sparked and fizzled out, leaving a convenient hole for the team to slip through. Smooth, Morales said over the comms. I'll let you know when we've got their attention. Take your time, Kane replied, already moving toward the next objective. Inside the Hive, the atmosphere was suffocatingly sterile. White walls, harsh lighting, and an overwhelming sense of superiority. Every corridor looked the same, which Kane assumed was a deliberate design choice to confuse intruders. Unfortunately for the Galactic Council, Kane had no intention of getting lost. He followed the layout he'd memorized from stolen schematics, leading his team deeper into the heart of the complex. They encountered resistance at every turn, squads of GC soldiers armed with plasma rifles and shields. Kane fought like a man possessed, his every movement fueled by months of rage and determination. He ducked, rolled, and fired with deadly precision, turning each skirmish into a chaotic ballet of destruction. Jenkins, surprisingly, managed to avoid blowing himself up, though he did trip over an alien crate at one point and accidentally disarmed an entire squad with his flailing. Was that intentional? Kane asked, hauling him to his feet. Sure, Jenkins said, breathless. Let's go with that. The power core chamber was exactly as intimidating as Kane had imagined, a massive cylindrical structure surrounded by glowing conduits and pulsating energy fields. At its center was the core itself, a swirling vortex of raw energy contained within a transparent shell. It looked like the universe's most dangerous lava lamp. Okay, Kane said, planting the explosives around the core's base. Set the timer for 5 minutes. That should give us enough time to... An ear-splitting roar interrupted him. The door on the far side of the chamber burst open, and in walked the GC commander, a hulking brute twice the size of the lizard soldiers, clad in ornate black armor. His eyes glowed with an unsettling red light, and his plasma blade crackled ominously. So, the commander rumbled in perfect English. You're the anomaly. Guilty, Kane said, raising his rifle. And you're the guy with the anger management problem. The commander charged. Kane fired, but the alien deflected the shots with his blade, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Kane barely had time to dodge before the blade sliced through the air where his head had been moments before. The ensuing fight was brutal. Kane dodged and weaved, using every trick he'd ever learned to stay one step ahead of the commander's attacks. He fired whenever he could, but the alien's armor absorbed most of the blasts. Jenkins, true to form, attempted a heroic distraction by throwing one of the death sticks, which promptly bounced off the wall and detonated harmlessly in a corner. Thanks, Jenkins, Kane shouted, narrowly avoiding decapitation. With seconds left on the timer, Kane spotted his opening. The commander raised his blade for a final strike, leaving his core exposed. Kane lunged forward, slamming the last death stick against the alien's chest. It detonated on impact, sending the commander crashing into the power core. Sparks flew, and the energy vortex began to spiral out of control. That's our cue to leave, Kane yelled, grabbing Jenkins by the collar and dragging him toward the exit. They sprinted through the corridors as alarms blared, and the Hive's structure began to collapse. Morales' voice crackled over the comms. "Nice fireworks show. We're pulling back." Outside, the mountain trembled as the Hive imploded, sending a shockwave that flattened everything within a mile. Kane and Jenkins tumbled to the ground, coughing and covered in debris. Morales jogged over, grinning despite the chaos. "You did it. The Galactic Council just lost their nerve center." Kane sat up, wincing. "Told you they should have killed me when they had the chance." In the aftermath, the Galactic Council retreated, their forces disorganized and demoralized. Across Earth, resistance groups celebrated as news of the Hive's destruction spread. Humanity, once seen as an easy conquest, had proven itself more than capable of fighting back. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Kane stood at the edge of the camp, staring into the distance. Morales joined him, her expression thoughtful. "What's next?" "Don't know," Kane said. "But if the Galactic Council comes back, they'll find out what happens when you leave a human alive." With that, he walked away, leaving behind a legacy that was only just beginning.